What is up, everybody? It's your boy at DFS Jimmy, bringing you another early week course preview from our friends over at fansharesports.com. That's right, the guys over at Fanshare Sports are doing all the work for you. They are listening to every podcast, they are reading every article, aggregating all the sentiment from around the industry and putting it into one easy to use place for you over at fansharesports.com. Make sure you get over there and check those guys out. While you're at it, give me a follow on Twitter at DFS Jimmy. And you're watching this episode on YouTube, go ahead and hit that like button. We'd appreciate it. Now, let's get to the action and what you are here for, the breakdown of the PGA Championship this week being held at Bellerive Country Club, a par 70 set just outside of St. Louis, Missouri. Zoysia fairways with bent grass greens, 67 bunkers and 16 water hazards. This original Robert Trent Jones design was updated 2005 by his son Reese Jones. It kept a lot of the same stuff around. They just manicured it up and freshened it up, all in preparation for this event right here. So the last time that we saw, or the only time really that we've seen Bellerive played under competitive conditions in recent history, is at the 2008 BMW Championship. And we'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at the winners. We'll take a look at who had success, who failed. We'll also take a look at the stats, what type of stats or what type of games seem to have success around Bellerive, or how they got it done in 2008. If we think it's going to play the same way, we'll touch on the weather a little bit. I talked to one of the folks at the clubhouse just a little bit ago to see what their take on the course conditions were. And we'll also get into what stats I think are important, maybe touch on a comp course or two. Ultimately, we just want to give you a good understanding of the golf course and of the players, the type of game that might have success, so that you're fully prepared to make all your DFS lineups this week. Now, let's get into it. Behind me, we have a picture of one of the holes at Bellerive. One of the reasons I chose this particular picture is it highlights what I think are two important things about Bellerive. One, you'll notice the bunkering. Both around the green and on the, on off of the tee on the fairway. The bunkers are deep here, man. One of the things I wrote down about this golf course in general is big. Everything is big here. The course itself is pretty long, 73,000 or 7,300 yards. They have 67 bunkers here, which is, it's not a ton, but it's not it's not nothing, but they're big bunkers. They're large in square footage. They're deep bunkers. They have large, high faces. You can see that you can't even see, from this picture, you can't see the bottom of any of these bunkers except this first one here. The rest of them, if you were to be at the bottom of one of these other bunkers off of the fairway, you'd struggle to reach the green in two on some of these par fours, especially the longer par fours. And around the green, these bunkers are so big and set off to the sides of these greens in such a way that in some cases these guys are going to have some really awkward yardage bunker shots, some 35-yard, 40-yard, 50-yard carry bunker shots that are unsettling for us hacks, and certainly not the easiest bunker shots for these pros either. So I think that the bunkers are going to play a big role this week. The other thing is, I kind of wanted to highlight the looks off of the tee. While it's a big golf course, we'll see this here in a little bit when we look at the leaderboard for 2008. The fairways are pretty narrow here. There's not tons of room, and if you venture too far off the fairways, you see all the thick, mature vegetation that you find yourself in. But the fairways, you see they narrow them in key spots with these bunkers. The bunkers are very much in play in the landing areas on what seems like every hole here. So really the rough maybe isn't my concern so much in guys hitting wayward drives as it is with the guys that are just a little wayward and they end up in these bunkers, man, off of these tees. They do seem to be daunting and really could present some issues for guys getting to the green from these bunkers. So that was the reason I chose this picture. Let's dig into the scorecard and see what the guys did in 2008 and what holes they scored on, or how the course broke out in scoring, because we are dealing with the same setup, very similar yardage. You'll notice this course played 0.63 strokes under par. I'm not sure that the course will play quite that easy this week. This is a major. After all, this was not a major that they had it set up for. So I think that maybe we could see it play just a little more difficult, but maybe not a ton. One of the things, I guess I'll start down here at the bottom, and sort of what the course composition is. You've got two par threes under 200 yards, two par threes over 200 yards. They have a net zero relative to par effect. You got an easy one and a hard one at both lengths. I will touch on number six. Number six is a brutally difficult par three. It will play over par. There's no doubt about it. It's a forced long carry over water to a shallow green, sand and bailout in the back. Not ideal to chip from, and a stone face on the water's edge. So really difficult par three that the guys are going to be facing. I will touch on this par four. The number four, par four, normally plays as a par five for the members. It will play as a 520-yard par four for this golf tournament, as it did in 2008. You do have a sort of a dynamic makeup of par fours that maybe we're not quite used to seeing at majors. Normally, you don't have these real short par fours at majors. It doesn't seem like, but there are two here. They do average under par. Expect them to average under par again this week. That does include number 11, which can be set up as a drivable hole, 355 yards on average. But depending on which tee boxes they select and where the pin is, they can certainly make this a gettable drivable hole, especially for the Bombers. So expect to see at least one day with it set up that way, possibly two, depending on what the scoring conditions are. But the superintendents definitely have the ability to manipulate the 11th hole to encourage some aggressive play off of the tee. The meat and potatoes of the course comes in the 400 to 450 and the 450 plus par fours. They comprise 10 holes of the golf course, just over half. The mid-length par fours, I think, are all fair scoreable golf holes if you can find the fairway and you can find the right quadrant of the greens here. The long par four is very difficult. Must find the correct side of the fairway, and you must find the correct side of the fairway in order to find the correct side or quadrant of the green. So while I'm talking about the quadrants of the greens here are 7,600 square feet. They're some of the largest on tour, and it fits into the big theme of this golf course, right? Big bunkers, big golf course, big greens, and I think that we'll see in the stats here we're going to look at in a second why that is, or what's important about these big greens. But the greens, because they're so large, to make use of that square footage, they are very defined in their quadrants or their quarters, or their tiers, whatever you want to call them. And if you find yourself on the wrong side of the fairway and you can't access the correct side of the green, you could be looking at some really, really long putts on this golf course. There's just no other way to put it. And because of the extensive bunkering around the greens, that is what will keep guys from going at pins if they're on the wrong side of these fairways. They'll almost certainly end up in the bunker with some of the carries out of the rough and etc. So being on the right side of the fairway is important. It may be more so in the approach aspect of this golf course, is you need to be able to find the right quadrant to the green to give yourself an opportunity at a makeable putt. Otherwise, guys could be facing a lot of potential three putts if they find themselves in the wrong quadrants of these large greens. And I think it's what happens a lot in these par fours. You have to pull the big stick out. You have to go for a little extra off the tee. You end up a little wayward, and then you're kind of in recovery mode from there. So the long par fours, guys are certainly going to struggle on. They are going to average over par, and they're certainly going to be the most difficult set of holes on the course. The par fives, they're not short. They're not terribly gettable holes. They're not the kind of holes that everyone's going to be going for two in. They will set up the 17th to be gettable in two, probably two of the days. I would imagine maybe Saturday and Friday potentially, but they can move the tee box up on 17 to make it a significantly shorter hole and encourage guys to go for it and score. 17 will be an interesting hole as guys come down the stretch this week as well. It's got a creek that runs all the way along the right side of it, as well as again, extensive bunkering. But if guys are encouraged to go for it in two, that creek could see quite a bit of action this week, depending on how aggressive the guys decide to get on this hole. But the 17th could be interesting as guys close out the round. They might want to get a little aggressive. So you could see some fireworks at 17, especially on Sunday, coming down the stretch. This would be a great opportunity for somebody to nab a birdie on the way in. So that's what the course lays out like. I did take the weighted average approach distance for this week, and I suspect that we're probably going to want to focus for proximity reasons, or for proximity ranges, focus on the 175 to 200 yards if that's your thing. If you're into finding proximity distances, I would recommend that range for you. Let's look at the scoreboard from 2008 and the players that had success, and you will notice a couple of things. I want to point out a couple of things anyway. We got a whole bunch of short hitters on here, man. Jim Furyk, KJ Choi, Steve Stricker, Brian Gay. None of these guys are long hitters, but they all posted a top 20 here, right? And there's another thing. Let me just run down here. Camilo Villegas, Aaron Badley, Freddie Jacobson, Steve Stricker, Brian Gay, all exceptional putters. They're all exceptional putters, and they're all shorter than average hitters of the golf ball that can strike it really well from the fairway. That is going to be my recipe for success this week. That's where I'm going to be leaning. I'm not gonna. If you're a bomber, that's fine. I'm not holding it against you. But I want guys that are going to find fairways and they're going to find greens. There are some bombers in here for their day. And we're going to look at the stats here in just a second of what these guys did and how their rounds broke out to give them success here. But I think it's interesting that on a long golf course, on what I consider big, right? Everything about this course is big, 7,300 yards, and you got a bunch of short hitters, that make up the top 20. The last time or the only time we saw this course. So I don't want to put too much weight into that, because this is a one tournament sample, many years ago. But I do think that there will be a premium on finding these really tight fairways that are pitched both directions. Guys are going to have to hit it both ways into these fairways to hold these fairways to give themselves the right angles into these large quadranted greens. So I think that's what led to success in 2008 based on looking at this leaderboard. And I'm certainly going to be weighting that when I'm selecting players this week as well. So let's take a look at what those stats worked out to be and how they finished up. So what I did is I took the top 20 list. If you finished in the top 20 in 2008, your fairways hit, your driving distance, your greens in regulation, and your putts, and you average this out for a top 20, top 10, and a top 5, it's pretty obvious based on the green that this is a green in regulation and a putts made golf course. You don't need to be a long hitter. You don't need to be a really accurate hitter. Because guys will miss fairways. You see where the rankings are for fairways hit and for driving distance. It's just not nearly as important as your approach to the green. And since these are high level stats, I'm having to assume that these guys that are approaching the green and putting well, they found the correct quadrants of the greens. But you see just how important approach and putting are. But putting is way more important than I suspected. When I just took an initial glance at this golf course based on the yardage and everything else, you wouldn't think it would be as important as it is. I mean, you only have like 3 bad putters in the top 20. And one of those is Lucas Glover. So everybody else, I just think with these large greens and the way they're quadranted that you're going to need to be a good putter to give yourself or to just keep yourself from 3-putting in some of these cases. Guys are going to find themselves in the wrong quadrants of these greens, and they're going to have to recover from that. And I think that that's why these really strong putters found success here in 2008. Again, very small sample size, but it is going to be the direction that I'm leaning for my player pool selections this week. So let's see. As far as comp courses go, I think you can look at other par 70s that have hosted, some like Baltusrol comes to mind right off of the bat where Jimmy Walker won. I think everyone was kind of chalking that up to be a Bombers course a couple of years ago, and it, besides Jason Day, very much didn't play out to be a Bombers course. I don't believe. Any par 70, a lengthy par 70 is going to be a good comp, I think. Again, I actually am really looking forward to Bellerive this week just because I think it's a dynamic golf course that will lay out really, really well for this major in particular. It's not a course we see often, but I am expecting just some absolutely perfect conditions and some great golf. I did, as far as the weather goes, I went ahead and called the golf course, talked to the pro shop, talked to a very nice young lady by the name of Hillary. Said they've been getting some consistent afternoon showers that have helped keep the course manageable and from getting too firm these past couple of weeks. They have been doing a little bit of watering to keep the course from getting too firm, the fairways from getting too baked out. It is a Zoysia grass fairway. They are used to the heat. They do stay bouncy anyway. But she said that the course is it's firm right now, but it's not unplayable. It's not too firm. It's just a little firmer than normal. But there are some showers expected to move in on Tuesday and potentially on Wednesday. They at the golf course are expecting those to soften the course up just the right amount and to make it perfect playing conditions. So keep an eye on that. That's what the folks in the clubhouse are saying, that they're projecting that Tuesday rain to give that little extra moisture to make it perfect conditions for everybody. It will be hot and it will be exceptionally humid this week. Down in St. Louis, so fitness might play a role, but it will be hot, swampy golf on hopefully just a perfect golf course for the PGA Championship. So with that, guys, pay attention to the weather on Tuesday. Make sure that rain does come in. Make sure they do get that soaking that they're expecting. If not, conditions could be a bit firmer. But either way, I'm expecting great conditions and a great championship. Hope everybody has the best of luck this week. We'll see you guys next week.